Hello, I'm Jonathan Karl, Chief White House Correspondent for ABC News, and I am here with former Speaker of the House and one-time presidential candidate, Newt Gingrich. Thank you for joining us. And because all politics is social here at This Week, we have put out some questions here, or asked for some questions on Facebook and Twitter, and I've got some for you if you're ready.
All right.
All right, let's get right to it. The first one, I kind of like this one, from Edward McKinney. He wants to know, do you still think that the Clintons are, quote, counterculture McGovernicks?
Well, they certainly were in the 70s when they were actually McGovern's campaign workers in South Carolina. Clinton himself actually, I think, moved very far towards the center with the Democratic Leadership Council and ended up governing almost as a sort of centrist president once we won. I mean, this was not obvious in 93, 94, but I think he really moved in 95, and I think most of the people who've done histories of that period would indicate that in the summer of 95, he decided he had to come to the center if he was going to get reelected.
So you obviously had some major accomplishments with President Clinton: welfare reform, balanced budget, surpluses. But you also, it was a pretty rocky relationship at the time, obviously. What is your relationship like with Bill Clinton now? Do you run into him at all?
No, we've talked on the phone recently, and I think we have a good relationship, and just as I do with Secretary Clinton. She and I served on the Transformational Advisory Group for a major military command, and we did work together in health information technology. I think we have a sense of mutual respect just based on the fact that we like ideas and that we try to work on finding solutions. And we may not come at it from the same angle, but we have some ability to talk with each other and try to find a practical way to get things done.
And there is a certain freedom with being a former president and a former speaker.
I think there is, although we were actually able to work, once we got through the initial year and a half of learning how to deal with each other, we got a lot done for about 2.5 years. It was mostly pretty practical. I mean, very tough negotiating, but pretty practical stuff.
Now, Pat Roberts asks, when do you plan to retire from public speaking? I imagine that's not on the horizon anytime soon.
I can't quite imagine doing it. First of all, I like doing things like this show, and I like giving speeches. And this coming Friday, I'm going to do an hour-long lecture on the internet from Mount Vernon about Washington and what he meant and so forth. So I like doing things like that.
But you're done in terms of elected politics.
Yeah, I don't think I'll run for office. No.
You don't think?
That strikes me as unlikely. I'll take a Paul Ryan position.
That's good.
It's
okay.
not on my current list.
Another definite maybe. You know, around here we kind of view that as a declaration of candidacy with a lot of people. All right, Denzel Walker asks, when your spending bill was vetoed by President Clinton, causing a government shutdown in 1995, did it usher in the GOP obstructionism that has become commonplace these days? Now, that's a rather loaded question. But
well, no, look, at the time, and it's interesting to comment on how the city works. No Republican had been elected to a majority in the House in 40 years. But what was more interesting was no Republican majority had been reelected in the House in 68 years. And the fact is, we got reelected as a majority for the first time since 1928 after we closed the government twice. And I think that's because we communicated to people how really serious we were about balancing the budget. And balancing the budget was a very high value to the American people. And so I would argue, nobody in this city agrees with this, I would argue, as the guy who helped design 94 and 96 successfully, that Republicans were not hurt by the collision of 95, 96. Republicans were helped because they showed real determination to get it done, and then they showed real practicality in working with the president to make it real. So by the summer of 96, we were passing welfare reform. We had passed a substantial reduction in domestic spending, and we were making real reforms in Medicare.
But based on your experience and what happened in 95, you now have Republican leaders to a person saying, "Oh no government shutdown. We're not going to do that. No. Are they wrong to rule that out?"
Of course they're wrong.
Wow.
I mean, if certainly on the electoral side, it's not going to hurt them in the long run. If people think it's not capricious or it's not silly, I mean, at what point does a particular agency become so absurd that you zero it out, even if the president wants to then fight you and potentially risk a shutdown? And this thing that George Will described, for example, the House ought to zero out this agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture that's teaching that the Pilgrims were illegal immigrants. I mean, that is so despicable You just say no more money. You're gone. Goodbye.
All right, one more question online from Barbara Gowans, who asks, tells me to ask you why politicians never, ever answer the questions they are asked, but rather have scripted spin information they just keep repeating ad nauseum. She says this goes for all parties. It might be a little harsh, but we do. I mean,
well, in my case, I think we just went through a whole series of questions that I answered directly.
Yeah, you're no longer a
no, but I
politician
go back
in
and look
office.
at the campaign. In my career is a good example. Most of my career I've spent answering questions directly. Every once in a while you get in trouble answering questions directly.
I will say you are a little different than most politicians on this.
Most politicians are risk averse. Mm-hmm. And they try to figure out what to say. They try to memorize what they figured out, and then they try to stick to that script so that they don't get in trouble by freewheeling. I personally have never found that very interesting.
And nobody ever accused you of relentlessly sticking to the script.
That's exactly right.
So very quick lightning round, 3 questions. iPhone or BlackBerry?
iPhone.
Favorite movie this year?
This year, probably Argo.
Argo was great, wasn't it? And comfort food? What is your favorite?
Italian. Any Italian food.
All right. Newt Gingrich, thank you very much for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter and also at abcnews.com/thisweek. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Speaker
Glad to be
Gingrich,
here.
for taking time to talk to us again.